So, cop shows and crime dramas have been a part of our daily lexicon for a very long time when it comes to television, comes to movies in general. It's just been part of life. Now, in this latest cultural need for change, a sea of cultural change that needs to happen because of people that are in the corporate sense are not able to go ahead and say, you know what, we can try to work together and try to go work things out when it comes to finding ways to put out programming that will help to benefit and help to foster discussion and discourse. Instead, the corporations are willing to go ahead and do whatever it takes to go and hold on to viewers or consumers or people that will patronize their advertisers. That's what they're doing right here. So with that said, here comes several shows and the crime drama lexicon that actually had really good ratings. And the funny part is nobody's talking about maybe what the makeup of the audience is that watches, say, Cops or Live PD. Because for the longest time, you know, hey, man, we've all had interactions with the law. I wouldn't always say it's always been happy to go and see everything that's going on with issues with cops. And when we kind of watch it on TV, it's very close to real life because we see what's going on, right? So I know a lot of people that would actually watch Cops for as long as I remember. Cops was always part of my life, the TV show. I knew people that actually worked on it. And the thing is, it was just part of things. Now, the show's been around for a long time. So for it to go away, that's one thing. But then, the idea to go ahead and cancel the show out altogether, I don't know if I really feel good about it, what I feel about it. Does it really change anything is really what the question is. That's what I would think would be more important. Now, Live PD, this does not help. And by the way, this can be considered or construed as a political thing, but I don't see how it is. Dan Abrams, who, as in some cases, he has worked for MSNBC and NBC and all, or ABC, I think, as well. He's had his own points where he's been very politically, left-minded. Just to say, I'm just making that point across. He has hosted the show, and he was surprised that the A&E decided to cancel Live PD as well. Cops is off Paramount Network. No more new shows. All the old episodes shelved. Gone. Now, they're probably going to be showing somewhere else. I'm sure somebody else will pick up that show down the line. I don't see how they cannot be done. I don't know. Something happens. So now, on his Sirius XM show, Dan Abrams actually talked about this. Here's what he said. Quote, I think that it's very troubling that we're suddenly in a culture where all police officers have to suffer for the sins of a few. Now, he's chief legal affairs anchor for ABC News. That's what he was. Okay, I knew it was one of those things, but he wasn't MSNBC before as an anchor. And I said that for every group. It's not just police officers. It's just so interesting to me that so many on the left have criticized this sense of collective justice, right? That it has to be individual justice. You just can't sort of impugn a community of people. And yet when it comes to this, the left seems very willing, ready, and able to impugn all police officers. Now, let me say again, that doesn't mean we don't have to have a discussion about the inequities in our society. And not just a discussion, action. There should be changes. There's real positive change in many ways going on in this country. But there's also an overreaction going on. And I think that's what Live PD suffered from. Well, this is the thing. I'm not against, if there's going to be particular changes that want to be made. What is being said absolutely true is there's an overreaction. And it's a lot of young people that are overreacting on this. I'm not saying there isn't a need for change, and I'm not saying that they're wrong. But there's a way to handle it. And again, everything that's going on right now and how it's being handled. I hear Dave Chappelle putting on his 846 special, 8 minutes, 46 seconds. Put out a lot of things out there, right? About who should be having the discussion and who shouldn't. The celebrities don't need to be a part of it. And, for those that are trying to get and put up, people that are out of touch, not understanding what's going on, or, out of touch because you have liberal elites or just elites in general that are controlling corporately the media or controlling Washington, D.C., whichever side of the line you are. But my thing is that I don't support either side. I'm an independent. And when I look at what's going on here, I just see a lot of power being picked up. So it's not justice so much as it is power. When you look at what's going on in Seattle, that's a power grab. When You look what's going on in Portland, that's a power grab. You look at what Black Lives Matter is, I believe there's a power grab there. Is it wrong? But I'm just saying, does it make that group any different than anybody else? That's my point. So seeing cop shows go away just because it's going to appease a group, it doesn't change anything. It doesn't solve anything. So they're trying to say it's glorifying. But again, the corporations, Washington, D.C., are so quick and easy to go and give up power. For what? I mean, what is it? Again, who sinned out of all this? When it comes down to it, we're looking at, we've seen all the issues where we see police brutality. It's upon those cops. Why is everybody else getting attacked? One thing I'm all surprised as well is where you have Hispanics, East Asians, Indians, and other cultures and Muslims, they're all getting, silenced. They're getting attacked. The point is, it's not just about black, it's minorities. It's about those that do have and have not. I've said this already. I'm not going to get into it again. So this is the story here, and this is Dan Abrams, by the way, at Live PD. Showed it very well. I didn't get to watch it too much. I watched it once or twice. But again, Saturday nights, I'm doing something else. So Abrams was hoping to work together with A&E to try to make changes to the show, and was shocked and beyond disappointed when the show was just canceled. I mean, what kind of trust is that? And for cable, who wants to work with cable companies now or cable stations if that's the way you're going to act? First of all, when you have a company that cannot stand behind you and has no backbone, Starbucks, the same thing, no backbone, no spine whatsoever. Okay, you want to do cultural causes, you want to go and help out, Pride Month. By the way, I haven't heard the gay community, I've not heard the LGBTQ community speak out at all about the fact that Pride Month is being stepped on by what's going on here, by systemic and institutional injustices. I don't hear anything about that. See, the other thing is other minorities are getting left out of the conversation. There's a power grab here. It's apparent. Call it what it is. But this whole idea of trying to say that people are actually getting help, as we already talked about. I just saw right now, I was looking right now about Minneapolis. Okay, so the focus on Seattle now. Minneapolis, George Floyd, we had the funeral there about a week and a half ago. As soon as George Floyd's funeral is done in Houston, I don't even hear about George Floyd anymore. Do you? Do you understand? There's a reason for all this movement, but we've lost sight of what it's all about. Now it's become a power grab. Do we understand this point? Am I making this clear? This is where we are, and this is what's happening. Why? Why do we have to go to this point? I just don't understand all that. This is where I'm coming from. So now, civil rights advocacy organization Color of Change was one of the groups that wanted A&E to go and cancel Live PD and Paramount TV to cancel Cops. Color of Change, Arisha Hatch, she sent a statement which Entertainment Weekly, which I'm taking the story from, provided. Quote, crime television encourages the public to accept the norms of over-policing and excessive force and reject reform, while supporting the exact behavior that destroys the lives of black people. Cops led the way, pushing troubling implications for generations of viewers. Now it's time for other networks to cancel similarly harmful shows. We call on A&E to cancel Live PD next. In a moment when everyone wants to proclaim that Black Lives Matter, we must hold these companies accountable to put actions towards with a complete industry overhaul. I'm going to talk about the movies in Hollywood coming up after this because they're also going to cave in. Do we understand that there is part of a reason why we are where we are? Think about this. Have you thought about the fact that maybe you don't like the way there's portrayal, the makeup, the representation on these shows? But cop shows are not just about white on black. I don't know what shows you've been watching, but do you look at Law and Order? It was never always about that. A lot of white collar crimes. Everybody was affected by it. Law and Order, you always had, first of all, okay, Law and Order is one of the greatest shows ever. Okay,
You had Asa Patha playing a lieutenant in the police department. And then you had, what was his name? Charles Burdett, I think it was. I forget the character's name. You had a lawyer that worked with Jack McCoy, or in the guy before that, I forget his name. Michael Moriarty's character. You had a lawyer that worked for the district attorney's office. You had people in power that worked in the police department in New York City, in the precincts. Ice-T has had a career outside of rap music and everything else he was doing of body count in his own career. He's had a freaking career. He's been on that show, 24 years? No, I'm sorry, 22 years. I think something like that. 99, I think, when it started. But honestly, Ice-T's been on that show forever. And we've had stories about the LGBTQ community, about black crime, and then we've had issues about police brutality. Do you understand? Ripped from the headlines. All these cop shows ripped from the headlines in real life. Now, okay, I can understand cops in live PD making the argument. Okay, I'll give you that. Because you want to have a certain portrayal made. Okay, well, that's understood as well. Now, going into another story, the idea about media industry reckons with a long history of collaboration with law enforcement. So it's changed over time. When you have all these TV shows, it has changed. We don't have the cop shows of the 70s and 80s. I mean, the 90s up to now, we have had changes. We've had a diverse makeup of cops. NYPD Blue Point that. They did that first. Law and Order did it as well. And you saw these shows. So in this story from the Conversation.com, they mentioned that America has long been awash in a sea of police dramas. Shows like Hill Street Blues, Gangbusters, The Untouchables, Dragnet, NYPD Blue, and Law and Order. Audiences view the world from the perspective of law enforcement, in which alternately heroic and beleaguered police fight on a series of wars on crime. By the way, you don't bring up The Wire? You don't bring up The Shield? How the fuck do you go and talk about all this and you don't bring up The Shield, which is arguably one of the best cop shows ever? And you know what that show's about. It's about a corrupt cop. Vic Mackey was worse than everybody. A complete makeup of the LA Police Department. You're telling me, see, also you're pointing out certain shows and you don't realize that let me just say, there's probably a lot of acting work that a lot of different minorities can get from those shows. Do they all have to be people of power? First of all, what about all the movies that you see now where if it's Jordan Peele or for somebody else, listen, you see other movies where there's, the depiction of slaves. First of all, is Roots going to get pulled off the air? Right? Things like that. Now, that hasn't been running a long time, but would that be taken away from people to go and watch? Historical counts, whether it's you agree with it or not. So, now the idea was, okay, you can say that there was a way that cops were presented, for many years, and that's fine. Now, in this particular story, they mentioned there are times where there are stories that really do depict things. David Simon's The Wire, The Corner, Ava DuVernay's recent miniseries, When They See Us. The dramas upend the traditional police point of view, asking viewers to see the police through the eyes of the most often policed and punished. So yeah, Wire, what a great example. Shield, great example. Why don't you see all of that? Southland, another great damn show. You guys are missing all this. You're missing it. In this story, Times Up the Police for the police drama, they said. Now, they're quoting 1968 Kerner commissions. Come on, get all this back. I mean, the historical context you're trying to say is whatever. Color and Change, Rashad Robinson, executive director of the civil rights advocacy organization Color and Change, that these cop reality shows that glorify, okay, it's cop reality shows, but are you going to go and change cop shows for good that are scripted? Or they might be documentaries, or they might be things where we're not seeing the reality shows. Okay, you know what? Concession with the cop reality shows, fine. But don't take away what can be done if you want to go in and show a proper portrayal and have a proper representation. that you like to see of proper makeup of how things should be, I'll be fine with that. But there's a thing where some of these shows really do make a difference, like Law and Order SVU. You think about it. Everything, or Law and Order was always ripped from the headlines, and they always covered so many different stories that would never get the light of day. Rape, you have incest, you'd have sexual assaults, you'd have hate crimes. All this would never get any kind of press. Besides what you have in a headline, which would never get press because the media can't do shit, the mainstream media. And these TV shows, if they take something from the headlines, they take the story and they document it for all. Then you're getting the real gist of what's going on. And the story and the conversation can be had. That's the point.